This video is all about anger. My name is Jennifer Van Wyk, and I'm a psychotherapist, a humanitarian, and a best-selling author. I want to talk about anger because it's a big topic. We hear about anger management, we hear about anger issues, and yet it's really hard to know exactly why are you feeling angry and then what specifically for that reason can you do. A lot of this video is based on the assumption, and I hope the reality, that you have first watched the primary and secondary emotions video. Watching that video will be really important, and it will really help you understand what I'm talking about in terms of the varying different responses that we will have to anger. The first reason why we get angry, it's the most practical. You probably know this. I certainly know this. And it really has to do with sleep and eating. You do not have to delve into the depths of your soul to understand why you're irritable or why you're getting frustrated if you just need to take a nap, right? I am certainly somebody who I need a lot of sleep and I need constant food. So sleeping and eating, when in doubt, just have a meal, get a good night's sleep, and maybe that will solve everything, okay? Second reason why we might have anger is because oftentimes we can actually use anger to try as a way to get what we want. Again, this works short term, right? Maybe you get angry at somebody and so then they feel bad and they do X, Y, Z for you, or somebody hasn't anticipated your needs, something like that, right? It's a way of using anger to get what you want. This, again, it works short term, but what it will do is it will really erode the relationship. It really breaks trust, it breaks the feeling of connectedness. And honestly, unless you're in a culture where it's impossible to break off from a relationship, it will really make it so that your relationships don't last long term, and it will certainly poison any relationships you have. So using anger to get what you want is, again, there's no judgment. We all do it sometimes, right? But it's not a good long-term strategy. So what can you do? The main thing that's needed here is healthy communication skills, right? So you need to get into a place where you make requests from a more vulnerable position, right? And you make requests versus demands. Nonviolent communication, it's a book by Marshall Rosenberg, and there's also a lot of courses. This is a fantastic resource in order to teach really healthy communication skills and teach you the difference between demands and requests. It really will make your relationships so much better, so much more nourishing for you long term. The third reason why we might feel anger is secondary anger. So again, this is a secondary anger is that reaction to a primary emotion. So secondary anger is often actually a reaction to fear, because fear as a primary emotion is very vulnerable and it's very almost disempowering, whereas anger is you have that confidence and you have that energy and that power. You really have a lot more power with anger, which is why it's so seductive and why we use it to try and make other people do things that we want, right? But when it's secondary, like I said, you're not getting down to the root of the problem. So you're really kind of spinning your wheels. It also breaks down trust. It breaks down connection. And we're not actually fixing the reason why we're upset, right? If I'm upset because I'm overwhelmed and then I'm getting mad at you for not doing the dishes, even in my mind, I know that maybe like, it's not really the dishes that I'm getting angry about, it's something else. Even if you did the dishes, I'd still find something else to be angry at you about, right? So getting down to the root of the problem, oh, I'm overwhelmed. I really feel like I need support. Can you, I really need assistance functioning, or I'm worried that I'm not going to be able to handle this, right? Even just communicating that and not having somebody even change their behavior can really solve the issue. And again, that brings you so much closer as opposed to creating conflict and distance and walls between you and your most loved ones, because that's often the people who get the brunt of our anger. So again, what can we do? If you go into that video of primary and secondary emotions, I go through how you can process your secondary emotions so that you can get down to the core. Unfortunately, we can't just dive down to the core. We do have to acknowledge and feel all the layers above it before we can get to the core. So watch that video if that's something that you think is going on. The fourth reason we can get angry. This is similar to number 2, but it's a little bit different. So we can get angry at people as a way to punish them. Again, this is also a type of secondary anger, and it's again trying to control other people, but punishing them even if they really deserve it. And oftentimes people might, but holding a grudge or holding resentment or bitterness, that is way, way more detrimental to you than it is to the other person. Often the other person might not know, might not care, or maybe they just give up trying to make you happy and so they're gone. Meanwhile, you're still stewing in this anger and resentment. Not only is it actually really poisonous for you, but it's even correlated to heart attacks. Like it's really detrimental to our physical, emotional, spiritual health, right? So holding on to resentment or holding on to anger as a way to punish others, regardless of what they've done, for your own sake, it's really, really great if you can let that go. So how do you let that go? It's, again, noticing that you're doing it is always the first step. And then trying to see if you can find forgiveness in your own way. Again, it's not for their sake, it's for your own sake. Ask your heart what it needs in order to forgive, and take care of your heart. Be compassionate for your heart because your heart has been hurt, right? That's why it's trying to punish somebody else. So first, your heart needs that compassion and that care, and then see if you can do that steps to let it go and release it so that it's not poisoning you and your space anymore. Okay, number 5. This is a big one all the time. We use anger as a way, anger at others, anger at the world, anger at the situation, and it's a way to avoid responsibility. If it's their fault or they did that, or it's how I was born, or it's what my parents did, or all of that, again, it might be justified, but we always have some sort of control in how we respond, in how we choose to live our best life, choose to have the best in this moment experience. Because again, this moment is the only thing that exists. So again, even if it feels so much better to be like, oh, they're just an idiot, and oh, that person cut me off, they're super bad at driving, blah, 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 right? That feels great. It does. Of course it does, right? But long term, it really prevents us from getting these opportunities to learn and grow, right? It prevents us from us becoming even a better person, or our life being better. If it's always your job or your boss's fault, and you don't take responsibility for staying in that job, or for talking to your boss, or for reporting it to HR, whatever it is that would work for you in your situation, then you're always going to have that crappy boss that makes your life miserable, right? And there's no way you can get out of it, as opposed to saying, okay, what can you do? How can you make the situation better, or how can you change the situation? So getting angry at others, again, regardless of what they need, if you're using it as a way to avoid your own responsibility of how you're going to respond to that crappy situation. Again, I'm not saying it's all your fault. I'm saying there's 100% responsibility here, and there's 100% responsibility here, right? And you don't have to take on their responsibility. It's not that you deserved it, or there's nothing better in life for you. You do need to take on your responsibility though, right? So taking, I'll tell you, I'll actually share a story, because this is a really hard concept for me, because I always felt like, especially in the whole spiritual world, you bring every situation to yourself. And so I always felt like it was my fault if somebody was angry at me or somebody did something to me, which is kind of the opposite. I took responsibility for other people's actions for me, to me. And I remember I was walking along Robson Street in downtown Vancouver, and there was this guy, and he was like, "Hey, nice jacket." And I was like, "Thanks." And then kept on walking, and he kind of followed me into the store, and then he was like, "Hey, how do you feel about how do you feel about making $1 million?" And I was like, to be honest, I'm actually pretty contented, like I really like my life right now. And he lost it. He started yelling in the middle of the store. It was super embarrassing-ish, but he lost it. And started yelling and being like, "What do you mean you don't want to make $1 million? Are you fucking stupid? Blah, blah, blah." And everybody's looking at me. And actually in that moment, I had this light bulb switch, and I was like, oh my God, I was super polite to him. There was nothing more I could have done. I was kind, but then still kept on doing, this isn't my shit. This is his. And it was so wonderful to just be like, okay, yes, we can take responsibility, but for our stuff, and we don't have to take responsibility for their stuff. So again, this is kind of the inverse of what I'm talking about, where you're not taking responsibility for your stuff, but oftentimes there can be a pendulum where we go one way and then we'll go to the extreme to the other way, and the middle is actually where the healthy responses lie, and that's knowing what's your responsibility and what's not your responsibility. So that's number 5. The last thing, what can we do? Sorry. This is a scary thing, but actually you need to take time to just sit down and ask yourself, what is it that you want? What do you need in this situation? If you're in a crappy job, but you have to support your family and quitting is not an option, what can you do? What is an option, And maybe there's not very many good options. Maybe it's just 2 crappy options. But just then take ownership of, what? I'm going to decide to stay in this crappy job because it's really important to me that I'm supporting my family. And just taking that responsibility for that will it empowers you, and it makes being in that situation, it gives it a little bit more purpose and meaning. You're not the victim, you're choosing to be there because this is more important, right? And then it takes away the power of your boss or that crappy job, okay? Let me know if you have questions in the comments below. Also, during all these processes, please make sure to take care of your heart. That is the most important thing always. Anger, especially when it's in these poisonous ways, so maybe not sleep and eating, but blaming others, trying to control them, giving away responsibility or a secondary emotion, all of those can be really poisonous. And so it's so important that you take care of your heart while you're going through these and while you're trying to shift your behavior. It's okay to do those behaviors. It's all very normal. I don't want to judge anyone for doing those behaviors, that's often how we're taught to use anger or to interact with others. I'm just here to help you become aware so that you can decide if you want to continue that behavior or if you don't want to continue that behavior. And whatever you decide is totally perfect for me, just as long as you're making that decision with some open eyes. So the last reason why we have anger, and this is a really important one again, and that's because it's primary anger. So again, primary anger that's the root. That's the initial reaction you have. And often you will have primary anger because somebody has violated one of your boundaries. Maybe it's a physical one, maybe it's an emotional one. So primary anger is actually very healthy. And it's really wonderful. And what it does is it gives you the energy, it gives you the confidence to be able to take action. So you really want to use that energy that anger builds up in you to actually do an action to ensure your safety from now on going forward, right? It really, anger gives us allows us to have that energy again to do things that maybe we wouldn't be able to do if we weren't angry. So that primary anger, very healthy, very important, really good for you to just listen to and then take an action. Again, if you just stew in it and you don't do anything, and then people will continue to cross your boundaries or violate your boundaries, that's not helpful. It's really important that you take that anger and you realize that it's a message to change something. You have to actually do an action in this case. So I hope that is helpful in terms of understanding the different reasons why we have anger and then how you can respond to it in the most optimal way. Let me know in the comments any insights you had, or any questions you have, or any advice you have, or beneficial experiences that you've had with this. Again, if you like this video, please press like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you later.